Vice President Mike Pence celebrates Catholic families, schools, and values, and praises the president.
President Donald Trump has been keeping his promise to stand for life.
Tonight, we bring you comprehensive coverage of the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. Terror scare. Police in Paris confront a suspect near the Notre Dame Cathedral. Government leaks. The Trump administration announces its first criminal charge. A saint's relics bring hundreds of thousands of Russians to pay their respects. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, June 6, 2017.
Catholics have an ally in President Donald Trump.
Vice President Mike Pence tells Catholics life is winning again in America, and he promises the Trump administration will protect persecuted Christians across the world. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reports on the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, where many members of Congress attended and Vice President Pence spoke to the faithful. Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. The Vice President listed a series of pro-life victories for this young administration. Pence also reaffirmed his support for religious liberty, and he highlighted the plight of persecuted Christians in the Middle East. Vice President Pence says he cherishes his Catholic upbringing, even though his faith journey has taken him on a different path.
This honestly feels like coming home to me.
Front and center today, Pence reaffirming his commitment to the sanctity of life.
I had the privilege of casting the tie-breaking vote in the United States Senate that allows states to defund Planned Parenthood.
The Vice President has repeated these themes since he's taken office.
Life is winning again in America.
And he's voiced his support for Christians who are persecuted.
We stand with you.
And for the group that has become the symbol of the fight against President Obama's contraceptive mandate.
And the Little Sisters of the Poor could not be forced to violate their consciences.
Catholics in attendance applaud the Vice President for lending his name to what they consider worthy causes.
I'm thankful for Vice President Pence and his strong words in support of our brothers and sisters that are suffering and being tormented and dying every day from the lack of attention and support.
Former U.S. Ambassador to the Vatican, VA Secretary, and RNC Chairman Jim Nicholson says Pence's message in events like this energize him.
You know, it keeps you from feeling lonely in this battle for life and for freedom. You realize that there are an awful lot of people engaged in this effort.
Vice President Pence says they'll continue to work with allies to fight terrorists on their soil. In his words, the goal is to drive the cancer of terrorism from the face of the earth. Lauren?
Jason, he also said the administration will keep working with Congress to protect persecuted Christians. Tell us about the bill that will be debated in the House.
This very night, actually, the U.S. House will be voting on a measure to help the persecuted Christians and others suffering at the hands of ISIS, and we'll bring you that story tomorrow.
Thank you. Jason Calvi reporting from Capitol Hill. Attorney General Jeff Sessions calls the fight against child exploitation and human trafficking a top priority.
Standing together, we will send a message to the predators and the pimps, the child abusers and the sextortionists and the traffickers. You will not harm our kids.
Sessions spoke today at the National Law Enforcement Conference on Human Exploitation. Ivanka Trump is also involved in this effort. Our Rome office reports she is working with the Vatican to host a conference on new forms of slavery. The Justice Department announced Monday it has arrested a federal contractor charged with leaking top-secret documents that suggest Russia hacked a U.S. voting software company just days before the presidential election. The report was published by the online news site The Intercept. Correspondent Mark Irons reports from the White House. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lauren. U.S. intelligence agencies are declining to comment, but if reports are true, this leaked document comes from the National Security Agency. According to a highly classified intelligence report obtained by The Intercept, this leak suggests the Russians hacked a U.S. software company that catalogs and verifies voter eligibility on Election Day. The Intercept report alleges at least one U.S. voting software supplier sent spear phishing emails to more than 100 local election officials just days before last November's presidential election. Spear phishing refers to hackers who, posing as e-voting vendors, trick local government employees into opening files tainted with malware, giving themselves control over those computers. Reality Winner is the name of the alleged leaker. An affidavit filed with the court describes her as having previously served in the Air Force. She held a top-secret security clearance. As for Russian involvement, a Kremlin spokesman denied the leaked report. This afternoon, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer expressed the president's frustration with information leaks.
You've heard the president very clearly talk about the concern that he has about unauthorized disclosures of classified and sensitive information and the threat that they can pose to national security.
An FBI agent said investigators found Winner had exchanged email with The Intercept using her work computer. The Intercept was asked by the NSA and the Director of National Intelligence not to publish the report. In January, the U.S. intelligence community issued a report calling Russia's alleged election meddling a significant escalation of efforts to undermine democratic order. Lauren?
Mark Irons reporting from the White House. Thank you, Mark. And the classified report published by Intercept does not say whether the hacking had any effect on election results. Joining us now is John Gizzi, White House correspondent for Newsmax. John, welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me, Lauren. It's always a pleasure.
President Trump is sick and tired of all of the leaks. This is the first criminal charge that we're seeing. Is this just the beginning?
I think it is, because there have been so many leaks on so many situations going back to the president's allegedly private conversation with Australian Prime Minister John Turnbull, at which the language got a little bit heated at different points.
And he was said to have criticized him and said that Australia didn't really matter to the United States.
Exactly. And again, what happens is when you have the insiders leaking information, sometimes they can tell the truth, sometimes they exaggerate the truth.
Tell me, later at the White House, the president is meeting with Paul Ryan, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Rep. Steve Scalise. He is talking to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Senator John Cornyn. Then he's having dinner with a whole bunch of others who are going to be talking with him. In covering the Obama administration, which both of us did, President Obama did not go to Capitol Hill. He did not invite lawmakers very often to the White House. This is a change of tone, yes? No?
Oh, I think it is. And remember something with President Obama, that he would go for long periods without even speaking to Speaker of the House John Boehner, and then voila, correspondents like us would get pictures of them playing golf one day, but it was few and far between.
Let's talk about health care. We also heard just earlier that President Trump was talking about repealing and replacing Obamacare. Anthem, which is one of the largest sellers of Obamacare's and the individual health insurance, is saying they are exiting most of the Ohio market. And by 2018, that's going to leave 10,500 people uninsured. You have all of the insurance companies moving out, yet we can't seem to coalesce. The Republicans cannot come together with the Democrats to do something about this health care bill. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I'm going to tell you, John F. Kennedy once said that success has 1,000 fathers, but failure is an orphan. No one wants to take the blame for the legislation that is now crumbling before our very eyes. The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is going to be on its deathbed by 2018. It's on life support in 17. And I would say that the necessity of having some plan and some coverage, or at the very least, opportunities for people, is going to force itself on Congress immediately.
And they will have to do something because people just won't have coverage. Thank you so much, John Gizzi, White House correspondent for Newsmax.
Always a pleasure.
Paris prosecutors open a counterterrorism investigation after a man attacked police with a hammer outside Notre Dame Cathedral. One officer was wounded in the attack outside the famous landmark. That's when a second officer opened fire and shot the suspect before he could hurt anyone else. The violence created a big scare for hundreds of tourists who had to be evacuated.
We had no idea what was going on. It was terrifying when they're yelling fast and yelling at everybody to get out of the way. You just kind of run away just with instinct, I guess.
The suspect survived and was taken to the hospital. His name has not yet been released. British investigators have now identified all 3 men behind Saturday night's terror attack on London Bridge. The third suspect is believed to be an Italian national of Moroccan descent. All 3 suspects were wearing fake suicide vests. Police shot and killed them after they rammed a van into pedestrians on London Bridge and then started stabbing people. Saturday's attack killed 7 and injured 4 dozen others. Police in Australia kill a terror suspect who killed another man and took a woman hostage. The same suspect had been acquitted 7 years ago of plotting a suicide attack in Sydney. 3 police officers there were wounded in a shootout with the suspect at an apartment building near Melbourne. The woman was taken hostage, was not physically harmed. Police say the gunman apparently acted alone. President Trump says he supports Saudi Arabia and 6 other countries' decisions to cut ties with the country of Qatar. It comes after accusations that the small Arab nation is funding terrorist groups across the region. Wyatt Goolsbee reports.
Just as the U.S.-backed coalition is almost ready to declare victory over ISIS in Mosul, the biggest diplomatic crisis in years is erupting across the Middle East. At least 7 nations, including Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Libya, Yemen, and Maldives, are severing ties with Qatar. The issue? Qatar supports terrorism and is too close to Iran. The move comes just 2 weeks after President Trump visited Saudi Arabia.
The president's message in Riyadh, remember, was to motivate all of the Arab and Muslim nations worldwide in the Arab-Muslim Summit, that all nations needed to take action against extremism and take action to also terminate the support, financial support, in any ways that they can.
The president is praising the move, saying, "So good to see the Saudi Arabia visit with the king and 50 countries already paying off." They said they would take a hard line on funding extremism, and all reference was pointing to Qatar. Perhaps this will be the beginning of the end to the horror of terrorism. Qatar's foreign minister denies harboring terrorists, calling the rift unprecedented. But now people in Qatar, the world's richest place per capita, are not allowed to drive or fly into Saudi Arabia, their neighbors to the west. Gerald Firestein, a Middle East expert, says the goal of the United States is to work with Arab nations to fight terrorism.
We support the idea that there should be a negotiation, a quick resolution of this conflict. So if it gets resolved quickly, if there's an understanding that's reached shortly, then probably no long-lasting harm is going to be done.
Several countries, including Kuwait and Turkey, are trying to mediate the crisis. Qatar is home to some 10,000 American troops and a major U.S. military base. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee, thank you. Across the world in Europe, diplomacy is also strained. President Trump's announcement that the U.S. will pull out of the Paris Climate Accord is drawing criticism from leaders in Germany, France, and Italy, longtime allies of the U.S. And during his trip to NATO and the G7 in May, the president rattled some allies on the continent, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel. She said she can no longer count on the U.S. But as political ties between Europe and the U.S. seem to be unraveling, John Allen says in Catholic terms, relations are in good shape. John Allen joins us now from Rome. He's the editor of Crux, specializing in coverage of the Vatican and the Catholic Church. Welcome back to the program.
Always a pleasure.
You say that the relationship between Europe and the United States may be tense, but church relations are strong and getting stronger. Why do you say that?
If we look at 3 issues in particular, one being anti-Christian persecution, another being immigration, and a third being conscientious objection, that is the right of people of faith to dissent from permissive secular laws on things like abortion and gay marriage. I don't know that there's been a time in recent memory where the church in the United States and the church in Europe has been more closely aligned. So in that sense, the church is kind of a countersign, if you like, or a counter-witness to the broader political trends that we're witnessing at the moment.
Is this the Francis effect, do you think?
Well, I don't think it's exclusively Francis. I mean, there is no doubt that Francis's leadership on issues such as anti-Christian persecution and immigration has helped. But I think it's also a matter of long-term historic trends. I mean, things are developing on both sides of the Atlantic in terms of the church's response to the broader culture that are bringing both sides closer together. And frankly, I think that does sort of cohere with Pope Francis's view of the world, because as the first pope from the developing world, I don't think Pope Francis has a specific vision for Europe or for the United States. I think what he has is a vision for the developed world and the developing world. In general, he wants the developed world to take its responsibilities to the impoverished masses more seriously.
President Trump has pulled out of the Paris Accord. He wants to build a wall on our southern border. He just sold billions of dollars in arms to Saudi Arabia. And in light of all this, how challenging do you think things will be for the incoming U.S. ambassador to the Vatican?
There are always things that they line up very neatly with the Vatican on, and other things with which they disagree. And so in that sense, the calculus is no different under President Bush, under President
right.
Trump. I think the issue is how adroit the new ambassador, which is going to be Callista Gingrich, the wife of former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, how adroit she is at exploiting those elements of agreement while managing those elements of disagreement. And on that front, I think the only wise counsel is to say, stay tuned.
That's always a good end to a TV segment. Thank you so much, John Allen, editor of Crux. Coming up, more on the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, including a surprise vocal performance.
This is my song.
Pope Francis takes to Instagram to talk about peace and mercy. The name of God is honored by saving lives, not by taking them. By bringing reconciliation and peace, not division and war. By showing mercy and compassion, not indifference and brutality. A special moment at this morning's National Catholic Prayer Breakfast. One of the keynote speakers, Mother Olga of the Sacred Heart, originally from Iraq, sang part of an old American hymn.
Oh, hear my prayer, you God of all the nations.
Mother Olga has an incredible story. She was born and raised in Iraq before moving to the U.S. right before 9/11. She was received into the Catholic Church in 2005, started a new religious community called the Daughters of Mary of Nazareth. And another group of religious has received national attention. They asked the government for protection from a part of Obamacare that requires employers to cover birth control and abortion-inducing drugs. You know them. They are the Little Sisters of the Poor. It's an order serving the elderly poor in more than 30 homes all over the country. Joining us now is Montse Alvarado, Executive Director of Beckett, the law firm that defends the Little Sisters in that challenge. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
You were there at the Catholic Prayer Breakfast this morning. Wasn't that beautiful, what we heard?
It was extraordinary, extraordinary.
She just had this amazing, amazing voice and this real feeling, aura of peace.
And it was truly a unifying moment for everyone. You could hear a pin drop.
You could, you're right. Let's talk about Beckett and what you have done with the Little Sisters of the Poor. It wasn't that long ago that the nuns were in the Rose Garden, and President Trump was saying to them, he said, I want you to know that your ordeal will soon be over. There has been a lot of time and energy that has put into this moment coming. Tell us about that.
Yes, it's been 6 years. Beckett has defended the Little Sisters of the Poor throughout this whole ordeal, and we're coming up, we actually just passed the 1-year anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision sending them back to negotiations with the government.
And now there's a leaked draft of a federal rule that would exempt religious groups from the contraceptive mandate, but it hasn't been decided. So how do you view what has been leaked so far?
That leaked draft would give them the exemption that they were looking for. The government, if we remember, gave companies like Exxon and Visa large exemptions from this mandate, but it didn't exempt anyone for religious reasons. And so now we're looking at a leaked rule. It's a draft, nothing is final, that would give them exactly what they're looking for. But even then, it's not over. If this rule is finalized, we still need relief from the courts.
So you're looking at another probably year at least of fighting this battle.
I hope it's sooner, but
I'm sorry to bring that on you. More sleepless nights for you,
yes.
Right? Let's go back to the prayer breakfast this morning. There were about 1,000 of us there. EWTN did live broadcasting all morning, and it was so moving to see Catholics, congressmen, people from all walks of life there. What impact do you think that this and the Trump administration decision about religious liberty has on the nation as a whole?
I really hope that we'll go back to our roots. It seems to me it's asking Catholics to come back together, to really think about the meaning of Dignitatis Humanae, the true religious freedom declaration that came from Vatican II, telling us that everyone has the right to religious freedom for all.
Thank you so much, Montse Alvarado with Beckett. Up next, Archbishop Timothy Broglio of the Military Archdiocese talks about his duty providing pastoral care. And hundreds of thousands of people line up to venerate a saint's relic. At this morning's National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, the head of the Archdiocese of Military Service said that giving of ourselves is part of our DNA as American Catholics.
To speak of the greatness of our country is to speak of men and women of virtue who gave of themselves for the benefit of all. We build for a new tomorrow when we draw from that wellspring of virtue.
The U.S. Military Archdiocese spans the globe. Archbishop Broglio is shepherd to 1.8 million Catholic men, women, children in 29 countries. He also ministers to patients in more than 150 Veterans Affairs medical centers across the nation, and he has advised the bishops on health care. Many Catholics are deeply concerned about health care and protecting their conscience rights. Joining us now to discuss this issue is Louis Brown, a director with Christ Medicus Foundation, a Catholic health care group. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to see you,
Nice
and
to
I
see
hear
you
you were at the prayer breakfast this morning.
I was.
First of all, tell us briefly about Christ Medicus, what you do, what you offer.
Sure. So you can find us at mycatholichealthcare.com. First thing we do is we offer a Catholic health sharing option to Catholics across the country if they'd like to do health sharing. It's a way that's affordable, protects their right of conscience, and really helps them provide for their health care in a very Catholic way.
What does that mean, health sharing?
Health sharing, it's where Catholics, Christians come together to directly share each other's medical costs. Instead of sending a premium payment into your insurance company, you send a share payment each month directly to another household with a prayer note saying, hey, we're gonna help you pay for your medical needs, and it works very well.
That is incredible. And you have about 1,200 households that are receiving funds, is that right?
That's right. In 49 states, when they have a medical need, they're receiving funds. That's right.
We just spoke earlier to the head of Beckett, and we were talking about the Little Sisters of the Poor and the proposed rule on the contraceptive mandate, expanding exemptions for religious providers. If it's implemented, how is that going to impact your health care providing services?
Sure. I think we have this health sharing option as part of the Christ Medicus Foundation, but we also work directly with Catholic medical professionals and Catholic primary care practices in particular. There's a major concern by Catholic medical professionals that my rights aren't, as a Catholic who wants to serve, wants to love through my healthcare vocation, aren't being protected. And knowing that the federal government, this administration, both through regulation and hopefully later on through legislation, wants to protect that right of conscience, it will be very important and really help us advance Catholic healthcare, reclaim it for what it truly is meant to be, and also take away that pressure, that anxiety from the church and from our healthcare institutions.
Quickly before we go, and just thinking about the National Catholic Prayer Breakfast this morning, there were about 1,000 people there. It was wonderful to see. But how do you think that the Catholic presence is playing out in the public square right now?
I think it's playing out beautifully. I do think that Pope Francis has really, changed the conversation and provided an opening. But what we see, whether it's Vice President Pence talking about, hey, I feel like I've come home, or we saw the beautiful expression of the First Lady in front of the Blessed Mother when she went to Rome at the Vatican and coming out that she's saying that she is a practicing Catholic. I think we're at a moment right now.
We are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Lewis Brown, Christ Medicus.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Finally tonight, relics of St. Nicholas draw a huge crowd in Russia. More than 300,000 people have come to Moscow's Christ the Savior Cathedral to see the gilded ark carrying bone fragments of St. Nicholas. While the saint never set foot in the country, has become the Russian Orthodox Church's most popular saint, credited with miracles and with preventing catastrophes in Russia. St. Nicholas, who was from Myra, now in modern-day Turkey, died in 343. That does it for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.